A lot has just been confirmed for Battlefield 2042. There's been a really big info dump looking at everything from specialist maps, AI soldiers, crossplay, cross progression, technical testing and more. And in this video today I'm bringing you guys all the details, so let's dive on in. They've confirmed right away that there will be 10 specialists, but specifically they've looked at the traits and how customization and loadouts will work in Battlefield 2042. Each specialty and trait of each specialist is unique to them and cannot be changed. So that's one specific part of specialist that is locked in. However, in terms of loadouts, you get to choose a primary weapon, equipment, secondary weapon, and a throwable. And equipment are items anybody can use, such as a medical crate or supply crate, and it's worth noting here that it seems as though customization is full scale in terms of primary, equipment, secondary, and throwable. The example they give is that you could have an M5A3 assault rifle, a supply crate for ammunition, a G57 sidearm, and a frag grenade, but have the specialty and traits of the individual specialists. For example, the specialty of Webster McKay is a grappling hook, and the trait is that he moves quicker, he is nimble. They also confirmed that things such as the RPG, SRAW, SMAW, and things such as the Carl Gustav M5 are customizable choices. So you can have a Carl Gustav on any of the specialists available in Battlefield 2042, and that is a choice, but you won't have a medical crate or a supply crate. So ultimately, the entire customization system is a trade-off system. Whatever primary weapon you choose, whatever equipment you choose, secondary weapon and throwable, as well as the specialist and the traits that that specialist has, are all trade-offs you will have to pick and choose. They've also confirmed that any squad, which is a maximum of 4 players in Conquest and Breakthrough, can have more than one unique specialist, so you could have 2 of the same or 3 of the same specialist in one squad. In terms of identifying the different specialists in the field, they say that customization is very vast and that a specialist can look completely different with different types of customization, so it will be difficult to distinguish what enemy is what specific operator / specialist, and honestly, considering the fact that you will be able to have a rocket launcher even if you're, I don't know, a medic specialist, means it's going to be very difficult to distinguish who might be packing something dangerous to you and who won't. The robot dog, known as the Ranger, is actually a call-in that gives you tactical options, and you can actually call in the Ranger who will follow and protect you, or you can send into battle. And this is all allegedly done in a call-in system. There's also a limitation of the number of Rangers available at any given time. So it's interesting to see that there are even some tactical call-ins that have decision-making processes and trade-offs to be had. On the Battlefield 2042 maps, they go into detail about clustering and sectors, and it's stuff we've already covered before. Effectively, the maps are being designed with various sectors in mind and different modes of having lots of points of interest in order to keep the maps engaging despite there being such a large scale. They spoke of the optimization differences between the 64 and 128 player experiences, and they say that no matter what you're playing on, you'll have dynamic weather events, and that you'll have as much detail as humanly possible. However, the player number is simply the limitation. They've confirmed other details such as the fact that you won't be able to fight on every floor of a skyscraper, and that they will be traversable in terms of elevators and zip lines, and that certain levels of the skyscraper will be accessible but not all of them. The reasoning being is that fighting on all levels of a skyscraper would effectively be an entire map on its own. They also said that the map limits have been increased, of course, to substantiate the fact that there are 128 players, and that map sizes, generally speaking, are much bigger, so this is something that will accompany vehicles, especially aerial vehicles as well, giving them much more space to work with and much more space to operate in. In terms of maps, they confirmed that there are 7 at launch for the all-out warfare experience, and further coming in the live service. But they did also say that EA Play on July 22nd, they're going to dive into the Dice LA mode, which, as we've seen confirmed, features maps from previous Battlefield games that have been remastered and upgraded to fit into the new Battlefield combat system and engine. So we'll have to see how many of those are involved and how many maps that actually boils down to, or whether we may see some of these maps stitched together into much larger maps in order to accompany the 128 player system. We'll have to wait to see how this goes, but it's interesting to find out how many maps will be available. For vehicles, they confirm the fact that the call-in system is dependent on maps, modes, and specific budgets assigned to each team. However, air vehicles and certain land vehicles will always be spawnable at spawn as well. A cooldown is also enforced whenever you call in one of these vehicles so that other people can actually use them as well. Each faction in the United States and Russians will also have certain kinds of hardware. For example, the Russians have the T-28 versus the M1A5 on the US faction. And this applies, of course, on all levels of air, land and sea. Speaking of naval vehicles and sea warfare, allegedly there are naval-orientated vehicles such as the hovercraft, however there isn't a specific focus on naval warfare right now, such as attack boats. Whether or not we see naval vehicles enter back into the fray is an entirely separate question, and we're going to have to see what the live service brings. They've confirmed that the AI will work in multiplayer, solo, and co-op in different ways. In multiplayer, AI is used for filling servers. In co-op, it allows you to play with friends against AI soldiers, and in solos, if you wish to perfect your skills and practice alone, you can play against AI soldiers. None of this is something that will be forced upon you, and AI soldiers are intended to fill the game, and interestingly, they note that AI soldiers are not intended to play the game like you would play it yourself. They are not designed to be specialists and cannot use traits and specialists, and you will see them undergoing certain tasks such as using a vehicle call-in screen or engaging with vehicles or capturing objectives. So effectively they do what a basic soldier could do, but not something that a specialist could do. They do say, however, that they do have the intelligence to decide whether or not to engage in enemy fire, flank, throw grenades, or even revive down teammates. It also states that AI soldiers are something used to backfill servers and that you cannot opt out of playing with them. However, there is a cap to how many of them you can encounter in a multiplayer match, and in general, you'll not experience more AI soldiers than players unless the match is just starting to fill up or almost empty. Players will always have a matchmaking priority over AI. The game does not have an offline mode and is always online, so even though you can play solo against AI, that is done in an online environment. Also, the technical test has been delayed, and this is something that's going to be happening later in summer now in order to test the functionality of the game, and will be under a strict NDA. They've also said that they'll be testing crossplay in some degree in the functional technical playtest, and that PC, Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 will be able to play together, and Xbox One and PlayStation 4 will also be playing together themselves. They've also said that cross-progression and cross-commerce will come into effect, so that if you have, for example, a PlayStation account that you've been leveling up and you move over to PC, any skins you've bought and progression you made will be available on PC, akin to what Warzone does. Overarchingly, there seems to be a lot going on here. I have to say that it's nice to have confirmation over certain elements of the game, and seeing that some things are being clarified, especially in terms of AI soldiers, the way optimization works, the way cross-progression and crossplay works, and the only thing that really piques to my mind as a concern is the fact that we could, in theory, have 64 players running around with Carl Gustavs. Now, of course, many of them may opt to decide to use ammo or health instead, or possibly even something like C4, but I do find it interesting that this is the strategy that they're going for, and I do wonder if the repercussions are going to be as they intended, or if we're just going to end up with 128 player Carl Gustav games. I don't really know at this point, and it's difficult to really say until we play the game, but this is the only really major concern I've seen from this information. Crossplay seems really cool, and I hope again that anti-cheat facilitates a healthy environment and doesn't lead to the mess that we've seen over on the sort of Warzone side of things, but overarchingly a really good set of information. I've left a link in the description below if you want to check it out yourself. If you enjoyed this video, guys, leave a like, leave a sub, and I'll catch you in the next one.